So we were talking about the importance of speaking out more now more than ever because of the recent election results in Canada. And I know that's a very sore sore topic at the moment.
Yeah.
So what was the initial reaction to all of that, and why do you think it's more important now more than ever to speak out in defense of women's sports?
Well, I mean, honestly, the election was something I was really, honestly, very focused on for a while, and honestly, it was very upsetting. But it really only took me like a day to get over it because why dwell on something I can't change? And it's just something you just kind of have to accept and then kind of get over, and then just keep trucking along and just keep trying to make changes, right, within the government. And like I have always said over the last couple of years, just keep using your voice, and that's what I'll continue to do. And I think, like, Canada, I don't know if people in the US know this, but Canada is so much different than the States. You guys are just way, way more. I feel like this is like everything's just so much bigger there. As the expression goes, I feel like everything's on steroids over in the States, whether it's more patriotic or what. But um, you know, and I guess when people say, "Oh, Canadians are so polite, they're so this and that, they're so quiet," like I still remain, besides Linda Blade, Dr. Linda Blade, who kind of got the whole ball rolling with announcing or making it public that men were in women's sports. I still kind of remain the only athlete here in Canada that has publicly used my voice and have come out and has spoken out publicly about men and women's sports.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of people in the background that are going, "Oh, this man shouldn't be competing," or "Thank you so much, April." People talk behind the scenes, but no one has publicly come out, just due to, either fear or, oh, they might get suspended like I did, or people might be afraid to lose their jobs or be called a bigot or a transphobe or what have you. Um, which to me, I find are all those expressions are something you would hear from maybe years ago. But and I've just been continuously trying to tell these people, like, look, if you want changes to happen, you're going to have to use your voice, or, like I said, wear shirts like mine, my apparel, wear shirts like yours that you're wearing, the XXXY apparel. Um, I, it's just the way it's going to have to be if you want changes to happen. Because
Yeah.
if we don't speak up, it's just going to get worse. And there will be no women's sports left or little girls' sports left if we don't. If we just keep letting the boys into the girls' sports, if we keep letting the men into the women's sports, we're just going to basically and now with the Liberal government, yet again, for another term, I mean, we all know what's going to happen. I mean, they're not going to defend women. They're going to continue to discriminate. They're going to do nothing about it. So, I mean, now we have to be louder than ever.
Yeah. And what was the reaction in Alberta and places where they've been very instrumental in making change?
You mean the reaction when they passed the legislation?
Yeah, well, with the election results, knowing that it's going to be.
Alberta is, I don't know what they're doing at first. I mean, there was a lot of talk about Alberta separating. I don't know what the process. I mean, I've taken a step back. I've been kind of focusing on sports now. I've gotten kind of deep into pickleball of all sports, and it's my new love now. And boxing. So I've been kind of focusing on sports again because I had my sport taken away from me. So I went through a little bit of a depression there, and then I was very focused on politics. So I've kind of taken a step back. I mean, Alberta's not my province, so I don't focus too much on it, but I do know they were talking about separating kind of like the Midwest area, like Alberta, possibly. I'm not quite sure about British Columbia, or I'm actually traveling out to Saskatchewan next week to do a speech out there. I may have the opportunity to talk to the premier next week and present something to him about keeping female sports female out there when I'm out there, but we'll see. So even just to, kind of tell them my story and to let them know that, hey, you know what, the legislation in Alberta is a good legislation, right? It got a little bit of a protest when it first got announced, but I mean, I think it's a good plan going forward. It actually starts in I think this October. So
pickleball, just off topic slightly, is that a mixture of badminton and tennis?
uh you know what? Yeah, I guess you can compare it to badminton. You know what? I'm gonna combine it with tennis, ping pong, and badminton because once
Oh.
once you get up to the it's called the kitchen. It's a kitchen line. So once you're up at that short line there, it can get pretty aggressive pretty fast, and you got to get your reflexes going pretty fast, and it's a really fast game. So I'm gonna do. I used to play tennis. That's why I'm actually pretty good at pickleball. But you almost have to ditch your tennis game because you really. When I started playing pickleball, I was playing like way back, and I was actually afraid to come up to the line so close to the net. Right, you're like, whoa. But it's funny because a lot of people are like, well, we know you, April. We know once you get into a sport, I just get so obsessed with it. They're like, you're going to want to go to the Olympics in 2036 in India for the pickleball. I just get so hardcore focused. Like, I actually have a coach. I joined a clinic. I've already done 2 tournaments. And I was talking to XXXY, and I was like, I really need a skirt and I need a visor. So of course, they sent me something I can wear.
Oh, cool.
So I'm just obsessed with it right now. It's so fun, right? It's just a fun sport. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
What do you think women are going to be doing now moving forward if the current prime minister, the current administration doubles down on allowing men in women's sports? Do you think it's going to inspire or even force more women to speak out? Or would it just be a matter of people just going along with it?
For
Which I
with
hope not.
the liberal government.
Yeah, with the changes, with the new government and everything.
Well, I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, we've always had a problem with liberal women in Canada, right? I mean, that's kind of the ongoing joke, right? Show me a picture of a liberal woman, and you kind of have this poster. I mean, it's kind of the same with the Dems, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think you and I have talked about this, and I think that's why I wanted to kind of do a video with you about this. And is these, first of all, I'll say this over and over again, is that women should be supporting women, not women enabling and allowing men into our sports and our spaces. And there's a different breed of women out there, and I'm not going to label them all as liberal women, because I'm not going to sit here and say that all these women vote liberal. But there's these women out there that, for some odd reason, maybe have never been part of a group in their life, never were, never had a sense of belonging, or never belonged, to a sporting group, or never just were part of a group in general, right? Never had some type of acceptance. And a lot of them virtue signal. They just are that virtual signaling person that feel good, and a lot of them call themselves feminists, which is quite hilarious, but they feel good, and they almost get their validation by allowing men into women's sports and spaces. So they would rather throw a woman under the bus by allowing a male to go into the locker room, or a male to go into the sports, because they feel validated by that. They would rather have that man like them, or say, hey, you know what? Thanks for helping me out. Thanks for letting me into that sport. I like you. You're my friend. Give them a pat on the back. and they feel validated by that. They get their self-esteem by that because they get that, they feel like they're helping that. It's like that nurturing, mother feeling of, oh, I helped that poor boy or that poor man. Most likely that poor man with mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these narcissistic men with mental health issues are the ones that are going into the sports in the first place. But they feel good about themselves. And I hate to say it, but a lot of these women have never played a sport in their life. A lot of these women have no self-love. They have no self-respect. They don't go to the gym. They don't take care of themselves. They don't belong to a team. They don't know what it's like to practice discipline or, a lot of these women, even I did it when I was younger. A lot of these women seek men's attention or, sleep around with men for their self-esteem or their validation. And these are the same ones that are virtue signaling. These are the same ones that are allowing these men into our spaces, in our sports, and are virtue signaling. And, you see it all the time. And it's not even just with sports. You see it all the time. These people latch on to these ideologies. You get these thoughts in their heads. They come up with these ideas and go, wow, I'm going to do something great. Well, why don't you do something great for yourself? Like, why don't you get a gym membership? Do something good for yourself. Build on yourself. Do some volunteer work. Or, that's going to build your own self-love and self-esteem. Instead, it's just, and then they call themselves feminists,
Yeah.
Because guess what? No real feminist is going to go out there and go, a self-acclaimed feminist is going to say, I'm a feminist and do something like that. Right?
Yeah. I put together some examples of what you're talking about. And I do believe it's people who have latched onto an ideology and they've been conditioned to believe they are helping the disenfranchised while they're helping perpetuate injustice against women, against themselves. But they've been convinced. And I think, social media has a lot to do with it. People latching onto, certain groups, perhaps, and they think they're fighting for people who are vulnerable. They're ignoring the consent or the lack of consent of women and saying that women have to do things that are against their will. Women are not entitled to their own sports, their own spaces, and they will still double down and call themselves feminists.
I'm a big Messi fan, but let me just explain this.
Answer my question. Would you allow him, if he said, I'm a woman, to play in the American women's national team?
You're using the wrong pronoun
Yes, right now. Hell yeah, are you kidding me?
Others argue safety is not a gendered issue.
Perhaps you shouldn't play if you are that concerned about injury, because there is always going to be somebody stronger. There's always going to be somebody bigger, regardless of the gender of the athlete.
A gentle reminder, please be cautious on the shirts you will be wearing. They could be a potential violation of Education Code Section 200 for bullying or harassment. And I wouldn't want anyone disqualified for, the negative influence from outside voices.
Your argument is really bad on this and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give
anything,
because the societal interest of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this.
You'd let Lionel Messi play in the women's national football team and destroy women's football forever. You'd let Usain Bolt.
It'd be very difficult to get a ticket, which would suck.
I want to do a little checklist here. You'd let Usain Bolt compete as a sprinter in the American women's Olympic team?
Yes.
Okay. You would let Floyd Mayweather compete as a boxer in the women's American boxing team?
And don't sit out. Do not sit out, because you are only hurting your own chances of placing and succeeding.
This person is clearly a biological man who has committed a heinous crime, and in the name of women. That should offend you, because it's fundamentally a fault.
That's what gets me, is that, Ava, you're all for women's rights, right to the point that something like this happens and you don't seem to care.
But it's nothing to
You don't care about trans women dominating females in sport.
With women's rights.
You don't care about any of these issues.
Because the point is that this woman has said that she is a woman, and that doesn't have any bearing on the crime that she committed. Okay, it's sort of
it has a bearing on the statistics.
It's sort of like
She has worked incredibly hard to earn her place.
So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this.
Just because this person has done a heinous crime doesn't mean they're no longer
All right,
a
let me
woman.
bring.
So
Yeah. I've seen some of those videos, and I mean, like, when I see some of those women talk, it's just so sad, because to me, it just portrays a lot of women that have no self-respect for themselves and just no self-love. And they just so desperately want people to like them, and they just want men to like them. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm so used to seeing that. It's just a trend, and it's a trend, and it's like, and I mean, I see it. It's almost like I saw it when I was growing up. It's almost like a very immature kind of thing. Like, I felt like that when I was like a teenage girl, and I was almost like, oh, I really want this boy to like me. You know, it's almost like, and I didn't have self-esteem when I was a young girl. For sure I didn't, right? And to see grown women behaving that way, it's just so sad. But unfortunately, that's what you're seeing, is that these grown mothers of children, and that's the sad part, is that these mothers are raising their little girls and little boys. Like the mother of the track and field athlete, literally telling other athletes, "Oh, don't wear shirts like this. You know, it's hateful. Don't self-exclude. Don't not compete, because you're going to lose out." Like, that's just so sad. You know, I was wearing one of my shirts the other day in a restaurant, and I usually get a lot of high fives. I get positive remarks like all the time. And there was a table of all of us wearing my shirts, and this bigger lady, not that it kind of had something to do with the story, but she was kind of disheveled. She didn't really look like she took care of herself. She was, you know, kind of all ratty looking. Again, kind of looked like a woman that didn't really belong to to a kind of like a sport ever in her life, didn't go to the gym. She came up to her table later and said, "Thanks a lot for ruining my day. I have a trans child, and your shirts are all hateful." And I said, "Well, this isn't about hate. What's so hateful?" And I said, "The truth isn't hateful." And I said, "By the way, there's no such thing as a trans kid." I said, "Just bad parenting or undiagnosed mental health issues." And she didn't like that. But no joke, about 20 minutes later in that same restaurant, this good-looking, blonde, fit lady wearing a business suit came up to my table and said, "Are you April Hutchinson?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And she shook my hand, and she said, "Thank you so much for everything you do for women in sports and girls. I have 3 daughters that play sports, and I want to say thank you so much." And I was like, wow,
Wow.
what a classic example of the two different types of women. One, you
Yeah.
know, big, overweight, has a trans child. And I thought, here's this woman who probably never belonged to a group, to a sport, and she's putting her mental health issues and her trauma or whatever she grew up with in her life, and she's putting that onto her child. And then we have the other example, right? So,
Yeah.
but what I'm
Exactly.
saying is, this is what's happening. Part of this problem with the women in sports and the little girls having to compete against boys is to do with the parents, with the female parents, and the women enabling this and letting this happen. And we need to bring more awareness to this problem, because it's basically a gateway.
Yeah. Because even when you see really high profile cases like Jazz Jennings, it seems
Mhm.
like it was the mother who spearheaded all of that.
Yes.
She was the most vocal, and then the dad is just going along with it. That's what it looks like to
Oh,
me.
it's all the time. It's always the women spearheading, and it's always the men that are just going along with it. It's always kind of like a weaker type of man, type B personality that's just like, oh, you know what? I just let her do everything in the household. It's always the type A, you know, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. And I've heard about custody battles, and it's usually the father trying to fight for his child not to be, being given medications
or
and
puberty blockers or
the child's name changed or whatever,
yeah,
and the name referred to as a different gender. It
yeah,
seems like it's the
exactly.
father is kind of in those cases. So yeah, it's very, very disheartening seeing women like that, and it still exists, believe it or not, in 2025. And they're doubling down and they're essentially capitulating to men
Yeah.
while claiming to be fighting for the complete opposite.
Well, I've said this all along, Irene. The biggest enemy, the biggest fight in my battle to keep female sports female is women. They're my number one enemy in this fight. Even though it's a man problem because it's men coming into our sports, it's the females, it's the women that are actually enabling it. So
Yeah. And like you were saying, you have someone who's probably never done sports in their life, doesn't know what it's like to be part of a team or even just to train to be the best you can be. I mean, I
yeah,
can't even imagine having to face what young girls have to face today. They can do the best they can do and then end up having to face a male athlete.
yeah,
And
exactly.
they don't realize that they're fighting for something that's harming women and girls. And they will throw labels at you while being misogynistic, while
Yeah,
saying it's okay to trample upon women and girls. What kind of sense is that?
no, exactly. And even with my training, like people always ask, like, well, why didn't you go back? You know, your suspension was up. You know, that was a lot of training that I did. That was a lot of money I spent just to get on Team Canada. Like thousands and thousands. I think I spent about 20 grand the one year just on, and you know, it's different in Canada. We don't even get our uniforms paid for. We have to pay for our uniforms. We pay for all our travel. Um, I work full time, so I had to use my vacation that I get off of work to go to these, you know, to go. Like I didn't want to go specifically to go to Panama the one year for my vacation, but I actually had to go to Panama. So that was my vacation the one year to go to the North American Championships. So, I mean, but they didn't end up, they did change the policy at an international level because I used my voice, which was great, but they didn't change it at a local level. So that's why I didn't go back to my powerlifting federation, because there was no way that I would go back and compete at, say, a regional event and watch some little girl lose to a man or to a boy. Um, I could surely go back and be on Team Canada again, but I was like, no, my integrity was much more important to me. So, but it's funny how many people wrote to me and said, well, you know, just go back competing. I'm like, like, honestly, like did you not understand my whole fight, what it was all about? So,
Because it was
so,
still being allowed at a local level, you're saying. They were
yeah,
still
it's still
allowing
allowed at
men.
the local. So local level would be anything local up to regionals, and then anything higher than regionals. They've now changed the policy because I did use my voice. So now it's testosterone monitoring, but they also have to provide doctor's notes, because I think a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, when you hear the word transgender, people think that someone trans, that they've had the gender reassignment surgery, that they've taken puberty blockers, but that's not the case. So when people say that they're trans, we're talking about someone that literally wakes up the next day and says, you know what, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin today, so I therefore am trans. So that would be like me today saying, like, you know what, I just don't feel like a girl today, I'm just going to be trans. And therefore, I can claim that I'm trans. Like I could just basically say, hey, I'm trans. So that means if I go to work today, people have to call me by my pronouns, depending on my work policy, that I'm now declaring I'm trans. Okay. But depending on, say, sports and stuff like that. So I've had the policy changed. You now need to have a diagnosis by a doctor. So with the policy change, you now have to have a clinical diagnosis by a doctor saying that you do suffer from gender dysphoria. You have to be monitored by a year by taking testosterone, like obviously a hormonal replacement and stuff like that. There has to be a medical documentation, and you have to be monitored for 4 years. So there's now all these rules, right? So people like obviously that's why the trans thing is so dangerous, because these self-ID things, like men can just be like, you know what, I feel like a woman. Now going to go into a woman's washroom, and
That's what Abby
therefore,
Silverberg,
yeah,
he
well,
just showed up and did the
yeah,
bench
Silverberg,
press
yeah, Abby
to make that
Silverberg,
point.
yeah, he holds the bench record now in Alberta. But this trans claiming people are trans or claiming that they're like a woman is so dangerous, because men are going into little girls' change rooms, they're going into washrooms, they're going into, men are murdering like that man that just murdered his whole family here in the province of Quebec. He murdered his wife and 3 children and claimed he was a woman just so he got moved to the women's section of the prison. We have rapists going into women's rape shelters. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's, so there has to be some type of law put in place, because here in Canada, gender identity is protected, right? Under, sex has always been protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but now gender identity is also protected. So for some odd reason, they've like, sex is just out the door. They forgot about women, and they've taken our bathrooms away. They've taken our sports away. And now the whole rage is just, hey, let's protect gender identity. And they've just forgotten about women and girls, and they've taken everything of ours away. So,
Well, whenever there's a policy that says a person can enter a bathroom due to their gender identity, that means any man can enter
yes,
into the bathroom, because it's transphobic to ask them what procedures they've had, or how much are they into their
yeah. So,
transition.
but a lot of people don't understand that. They think that because someone is trans or because they identify, people think that, oh no, but they've had the surgery, they don't have a penis anymore, or they've gone on so many drugs that that's almost castrated them. They don't think that way. No, like my boyfriend, or say a male friend of mine, could just be like, nope, I'm a woman, and then they're a full-on testosterone filled freak, and they could just walk in tomorrow, and and that's the thing, that's the dangerous part. And most of these men suffer autogynephilia, and they have these fetishes, and we all know that there's pedophiles out there. And that's the thing that, that I'm working at. I mean, I stick to the sports category, but I'm also bringing awareness to obviously these predators or people taking advantage of this and going into the locker rooms, to the bathrooms. There's many restaurants just in my city here that have taken away our women's bathrooms and made them gender neutral. And not just single stalls, but the whole bathroom. Like, there's women that have been sexually assaulted or raped that do not want to share their bathrooms with men. I being one of them, so we're just trying to, and now with the Liberal government here in Canada, I mean, there's not going to be any changes. I do know that the Prime Minister that we currently have elected is probably a smidge better than Trudeau, but I mean, we're going to have to keep hammering away at it and just keep being vocal. And that's why we need all the women to be vocal and to not play along with this, and to encourage men into our spaces, into our sports.
Yeah, exactly. And
Because
now more than ever.
one day they're going to get hurt, and one day their daughters are going to get hurt. And guess what? And then they're going to be like, wow, I guess I should never encourage that man into my little girl's locker room, because, one day it's going to happen to them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, is it going to get to the point where they're going to sadly have to learn the hard way when it happens
Yeah.
to someone they know, what happens to them? It's a bit more close to home, and they get that realization. And I think that happened over here to a degree. And that's why people started waking up and were
Yeah.
like, this has gone too far, and how far are we going to allow it to go? So I think that's
Yeah.
what really woke people up. Unfortunately, it had to get to that point, but
Well, be careful what you wish for. That's all I have to say.
Exactly. And at some point, you have to acknowledge reality and the practicality of all of this. like you said, you can't just say, oh, it's only a certain type of man who's going to be allowed into the bathroom. That's just not true. It's an open policy now. Once there's a policy in place, it's an open policy. That's why Riley Gaines was told that her locker rooms were unisex, because they said, well, they see it as a way of getting around any awkwardness. We'll just make things unisex. We'll just take away men and women's bathrooms, like you were saying, and we'll just make everything open. And they think, oh, that's a way around it. That's a solution. But taking away women's private spaces is never going to be a solution. It's only going to backfire.
No. The thing is, it started being a problem when they took the women's away, and it's, you know, it's discrimination when you force it onto us. It's been forced upon us to share it with men. So if they just kept the women's washroom and the men's washroom, much like the legislation that they formed in Alberta, right, with the sports, you have a female-only category, a male-only category. So we're talking XY chromosome. I don't care if you have to put this over the door of the bathroom. You put XY chromosome, XX chromosomes, and then you have a universal, a unisex bathroom. That, you know what, these women that support the men, go ahead, go in the unisex, go for it, go half at it. But you know what, at least have a female-only bathroom that we can all go into. You know, don't be forcing us to share our bathrooms and our sports. And that's why the legislation for the sports works so well, because we do have our female-only category, and there is a unisex, a co-ed category. So that way, you know, that the women that want to support, they can go play in the sports and support the men pretending to be women and go play in that category.
Exactly. I mean, these are the people who call themselves pro-choice, but they will clap and cheer on women having their options taken away.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping these, you know, establishments from having those options where they can have a single stall bathroom and then male and female bathroom. There's nothing stopping them from doing that.
Exactly.
Why take it away from women and
it's
girls?
Always, you know, it's always suspect when, you know, you have an establishment, just like that Nicholas Sapita, the swimmer here. You know, it's always suspicious when you go to a swim meet and there's the girls' change room, a boys' change room. There is a family change room, but Nicholas Sapita always changes in the girls' change room. I wonder why. So, and the women are like just, you know, covering up their little girls with towels. Well, again, why are they not linking arms and blocking that man from going into that change room? You know, and then you have the quiet type B personality fathers that are sitting at home and probably maybe not even knowing about this. But I mean, again, it's unbelievable.
So at least thankfully, you were saying that you've had companies reach out to you and you've got sponsorship deals in the midst of all of this. And, you know, these companies, you could say they're putting their brand on the line because they did it in a time where it wasn't popular to speak out against this sort of thing. So that's a good thing. And I don't know, so some of them are women-owned companies as well, like is XXXY Athletics. That's one of the companies that you've now become a spokesperson for.
Yeah. So after my suspension, I mean, a bunch of companies. I mean, I couldn't be sponsored by all of them because some of them were smaller companies. I mean, I wish I could be sponsored by all of them. I mean, but some bigger companies. So I worked with XXXY Athletics because much like, so I have my apparel I've been doing for about 2 years now. The Keep Female Sports Female brand. I have obviously the hats, the t-shirts, the hoodies, the tank tops that I've been selling on my website for 2 years, which sell really well. Again, I really started the brand because it was for people that just didn't want to speak up or say something. So it's a great thing that people can wear and just kind of keep their mouths shut, but they could just walk around. And it's a great apparel because people always get high fives. Like I wear it to the market and I actually wore it downtown Victoria, British Columbia, which is a super, super woke kind of city. And I had teenagers come up to me and give me high fives. And they're like, where can I get one of those? And I got old people, so people love it. And then we have XXXY, which is, they're in the States, but they also ship worldwide as well. And it's just like, it's the same message, but a different message with the way they put it on their brand. They're more of a brand, right? The owner, Jennifer Say, is just, she's brilliant with her packaging and her brand. And I went down to Houston and did a commercial with them and with Riley Gaines, who I'm friends with, and I met a whole bunch of the other athletes. So I love repping their stuff. And obviously I have one of their codes. If you use code April, you get 20% off on their gear. And also I got recently sponsored by PVL Nutrition, and they are also available in Canada and the United States. And that's like a supplement company. And I actually was using their stuff for about 10 years. So, and the great stuff about their supplements, so it's like protein, you got creatine, BCAAs, all the stuff you would need, as an athlete, but even if you're a non-athlete, it's great stuff to take. But I was using their stuff all through my years of Team Canada. So it was like, I was just so ecstatic that they reached out to me because they saw the commercial I did with Riley Gaines. They saw that I was suspended, and they're like, you know what, April, you're such a great athlete. I have such a positive outlook on life, and they wanted to support me, and they thought, I've known Stephanie Worsfold for a while. She's from London. She's a competitive bodybuilder. She's just a great woman. So, but yeah, if you use my code, you get 20% off, which is a huge savings. And the last one is a all-natural skincare line, which you actually use their products.
Yeah, that's where I get my beef tallow creams from.
Yeah.
And then you sent me the link and I was like, oh, I know this company.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And again, I was using their stuff too, because I was on the carnivore diet for a while, and I stumbled upon their stuff because it's beef tallow, but it's mixed with olive oil, honey, and you can get scented or non-scented, but they just came out with their whipped cream. But if anyone knows me, I'm a real freak about like all natural. So I don't put chemicals on my body.
Oh.
And so I don't know if people know how old I am. You can just look me up on Wikipedia to find that information out. But I am a freak about my face. Like I have this thing, I don't want to age. I'm like, no, I have to stay young. I want to be like Benjamin Buttons forever. So I'm pretty, like, I have cheat days, obviously, but that's why I like to take my supplements. I'm really a stickler for my water. My skincare regime is it's pretty much natural, right? So that's why I love this skincare line, because it's like I wash my face, I do my toner, and then I put my skincare stuff on. So it's all natural, and I swear I swear by it. So when they actually sponsored me, I was like, oh my God, it's amazing because I love your stuff. So I highly recommend. I'm not trying to sell the product to people. It's just like, how could I be sponsored by these people that I've already used their product? So I think it was a sign from God. But again, if people use my code it's the Tallow Truth, you get 15% off. So, and it's a Canadian company, which is great. I highly support Canadian companies, especially now because we're getting slammed by Donald Trump and your tariffs. How dare you? Hey, look at my water bottle. I love Trump, by the way. So
hopefully things will settle down soon. But yeah.
Yeah, when's he gonna settle his jets? But no, we love, my partner and I, we love we don't love Trump the person. We love a lot of his policies, obviously, because he's doing a great job with obviously the sports, keeping men out of women's sports. So I was there for that for sure. So but obviously we don't talk about tariffs. So I'm not even talking about that stuff. So
well, what's going on over here? We're getting there, but we still have a way to go, because we are still, every weekend there's a new male athlete in track and field. Like, what is going on?
That's what I'm saying. Like, but you guys have left and right wing media. Like we have Rebel News here. That's like they're considered right wing, but they're really not even like right wing. They're the only media that we have here that actually exposes the truth. Otherwise, we have CBC, which is gaslighting mainstream media that doesn't tell anyone what's going on. So I actually had to contact Rebel News and say, hey, can you give me a list of all the men and women's sports? Because I need to do a presentation next week when I go to Saskatchewan. Because people here walk around like sheep and robots because they have no idea about the amount of men that are in women's prisons. I called a couple shelters, women's shelters the other day, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I just kind of want to know how you treat actual women in your shelters compared to, like, is there trans women in there? And they're like, oh, yes, we take care of them very well, like almost more so better than actual women. And I was like, are you kidding me? So like the mainstream media doesn't report about this stuff. So
They
this
said
is
that
where
to you.
so they don't tell like my dad sits down at 11 o'clock and watches the news every night. And I was like, Dad, you shouldn't be watching that because they're not telling you the truth, but they gaslight you. Like they have no idea what's going on. That's why the election, people think it was rigged because literally they were just feeding lies. Even the polls were like weird and like it was just it's just yeah. But keep watching Rebel News because that's where you're going to get the facts. That's where you're going to get the truth over here in Canada. So
Yeah, I love Rebel News.
yeah. So, but you guys at least get, two different sides of stuff. You have like a right and a left. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I found Fox a bit sketchy for a while.
Yeah.
But even so, yeah, we do have that alternative. No, I wouldn't say alternative media per se. I mean, that's just the regular people like YouTubers and people who report on social media.
That's all I watch is YouTube for news, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't watch the actual news. I do watch Rebel News, obviously, but
and the ratings of the super, like MSNBC or whatever, their ratings have gone way down. Because people know what they're all about.
Is CNN and Fox, are they owned by the same company?
I don't know. I didn't think so. That's interesting.
I've heard that they were, but maybe that's just a myth. But
I have to look that up. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, yeah, because I mean, they want to continuously divide people, right? But I wouldn't be surprised either. But
yeah, that's the way
anyways, yeah.
is.
So,
well, we'll keep speaking up, and eventually, I think like the polls and everything here show that people have come around in terms of the majority of the country are against, men and women's sports now. So because people have had their eyes opened and seen how far it went, and in their eyes, it just went too far. So that's something. But we're hoping things get written into law, like what's gone on over in the UK. And that will definitely put an end to it once and for all.
well, we're still drowning here in Canada. Nothing's getting better. We had some hope for Alberta, which is, I mean, the best province in Canada, but we were hoping that maybe there would be another election in the year, but it looks like maybe the Liberals might be getting a majority government. I think they're only 1 or 2 seats away. So,
wow.
Yeah, I just hope that Carney is better than Trudeau in the fact that when someone asked him how many genders there were, he said there was only 2 sexes, and he looked a little discomfort when he was answering the question. So him having a trans daughter, there was speculation that he sent her away when she was 13. But I think she was sent away when she was 13 to get a consultation. I did hear after that she was maybe sent when she was in her 20s. So she was not a minor to get a double mastectomy possibly. But as a father, I can only think that he has some regrets or some uncomfortable feelings about having a child that is going through that or have gone through that, right? So that's why I think he looked very uncomfortable answering that question, because he really didn't answer it. He just kind of went a roundabout way of answering it. So
Wow.
if it was Trudeau answering the question, he would have been like, oh, trans women are women and these are my people. And, you know, so I think Carney's a little bit better. At least he knows there's only two sexes. So we'll see what happens. But I am going to work on Doug Ford in the next couple of months, because that's our premier. And provincially, that's what we have to do, is kind of go province by province. So
that makes sense. And it's encouraging to see what happened in Alberta.
Yeah.
And that's because, you know,
well,
people
I'm
like
going
yourself.
to Saskatchewan next month, and so hopefully there'll be some changes there, because maybe I can just tackle this province by province, right? So Pierre Poilievre did say that this is a provincial issue. It will have to be by provincial leaders. So maybe I can just, that will be my task. And I mean, I can't tackle all the spaces and all the issues. I can just do sports, right? So and for me, that's just safer for me to stick to sports, because that's a slam dunk issue that, you know, 90% of Canadians all agree on, that men should not be in women's sports. So, you know.
That sounds like a plan to me, province by province.
Yeah. And that's something I'm ready to tackle. And in the meantime, I'll just keep kicking some ass in pickleball. So
sounds good. Well, you'll have to teach me, because I have no idea what pickleball.
Yeah, and that's a sport. That's a sport that I'll be playing men, because I do sign up. My partner and I, we play mixed doubles. So and I don't care about that. Obviously, that's something I sign up for. So
yeah, I like mixed doubles. I've always liked that in tennis.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So
yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, you have to keep us posted here as well.
For sure. People always, there was a fan last week that says, oh, I love your videos with Irene. So I told her I was doing one with you. So there's people always write me and tell me that they love our videos. So
oh, that's so cool.